Thank you, Gio. Gio introduced and explained some AI or ICT digital project being conducted at World Bank. Now we have two discussants who have a not easy task to discuss because of the discrepancies of the nature and the scope of the two previous presentations. But I know they will deal with it very cleverly because they are pretty much exposed to discourses on AI in their work positions. And they will help us navigate this tough and rough landscape. Let me begin with Dr. In-kyung Sun from STEPI.
Good morning. My name is In-kyung Sun, and I'm a research fellow at STEPI, Science and Technology Policy Institute in Korea. STEPI is one of the government think tank under the Prime Minister's office. So as a policy analyst, my job is usually to identify emerging issues at the intersection of science, technology, and international relations. So today I would like to discuss AI for development, today's event's topic, through the lens of science and technology policy, especially focusing on the structural opportunities and changes we face. Probably it may be, it's from the very macro level perspective of national policy. So AI for development can be discussed, I think, in a two-track approaches, users and creators. And however, I observed that the current discussions, not only here, but everywhere, are mostly from users' perspective. We talk a lot about the 3 A's: accessibility, affordability, and agreeability in terms of ethics. While these discussions are undoubtedly crucial, they primarily view the developing nations as merely users or consumers of technology. However, I believe we must look at the second track as well, developing nations as creator and designer of AI. We often hear about the democratization of AI, but the true democratization shouldn't be just about expanding who uses AI. It must be about expanding who can build AI. So if we only focus on users' expansion, we may risk simply enlarging the market for global big tech firms, reinforcing a structure where a few entities monopolize the models while the rest of the world merely subscribes to them. So to illustrate this, let me draw an analogy from the pharmaceutical industry. Why do we still struggle with vaccines and treatments for endemic diseases in developing countries? It is not because global pharmaceutical companies lack of their technological capabilities. It's because there is no market demand in wealthy nations. So the return on investment is deemed too low. So this is a classic market failure model. But I fear that AI sector may follow a similar path. While general purpose AI models will thrive, big tech may have little incentive to develop specialized AI solutions that address specific cultural contents, understand local languages, or unique societal challenges of developing countries. So this is why indigenous capacity or capabilities is very vital. And developing nations need the ability to input their own appropriate data and design AI architecture that solve their own problems. So what is the biggest challenge here? It brings us to the fundamental dilemma of science and technology policy. Do we have to make our own technology, or do we have to buy technology? So when a country seeks for economic catch-up, the government must decide, should we import the necessary or specific technology for our immediate efficiency, or should we invest in R&D and human capital, build our own capability? And ideally, we would do both, but in reality, resources are very scarce. So when economic conditions worsens, R&D budgets for the distant future are often the first item to be cut in favor of immediate survivor. So this is where selection and concentration becomes critical. And this decision cannot always be based solely on the current data. So I was provided some the questions for discussion in advance by the host center. So to answer that question about aligning AI theory with the actual practice, it really comes down to one tough decision for every government, make or buy. And the theory says AI will solve our problems, but in practice, imported AI often doesn't work for our specific local needs. So leaders need to ask, are we content with just buying foreign technology, or will we commit to build our own capacity? So current data might say it is too expensive to invest, but the feasibility studies might say no. But just like they told Korea 50 years ago, when we tried to build our own highway or Ulsan industrial complex, which was our backbone for our Korea's economic development. But if we want to bridge the gap between the promise of AI and the reality on the ground, we need to look beyond the short-term cost. And usually, I really don't like make a big statement, but I would like to emphasize that the most important step is having the courage to invest in your own people and your own technology, even when the immediate return isn't visible. So that is, I believe, is how we truly make AI work for the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Son. She highlighted data generation and how to generate data, which is, authentic. I think it means culturally and socially relevant data for AI use. And she also very fundamental question of buy or make. And I found it very useful and interesting. She used the analogy of the Gyeongbu Goseokdoro Korean highway, expressway in the history of Korean development. So thank you for your inspiration. Then now we move on to Dr. Eunjin Ryu from KAIST.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to this session. I received 4 guiding questions in advance, and I would like to share my reflection on going through them one by one, drawing on today's presentation, my field experience, and my research on digital OTA cooperation. The first question was about the most important step in the aligning AI theory with real-world practice. From what I've seen on the ground, the very first step, not about the choosing the right AI tool, but about making sure the digital and AI ecosystem is actually ready. And this becomes very clear when you look at the actual cases. For example, in Kenya's digital ID project, the whole initiative stalled, not because the technology didn't work, but because there was no legal basis for data protection and public trust was very low. Nigeria faced similar challenges. The ID system kept being relaunched, but it is struggled because the legal and policy foundations wasn't stable. In Uganda, weaknesses in system design even led to vulnerable groups being excluded from the services. And Kenya's open data portal looked fine technically, but without a legal mandate or budget, it simply couldn't be sustained. These cases tell us something very simple. Technology alone doesn't work unless strategy, legal framework, institutions, operations, and human capacity are all moving together. Digital cooperation is not only a typical sector, it's a space where many parts of the system must align simultaneously. So for me, aligning AI theory with practice starts with the ecosystem readiness, not with the AI model or theory itself. The second question asked about the biggest challenge when applying AI in real development contexts. And here my honest answer is fragmentation. In Uzbekistan, for example, ministries often use different data standards, different systems, and different workflows. So even something simple like analyzing basic administrative data required negotiations, alignments, and coordination across multiple institutions. When systems are fragmented like this, AI can only exist as an isolated pilot. It cannot become part of how government actually functions. And this fragmentation also connects to what we heard earlier presentation, misclassification, biased outputs, etc. So these issues aren't really about AI being too advanced. They're about ecosystems not being coherent enough to support AI responsibly. So this is exactly what the design really gap describes. Even the best design tools fail if they don't match local realities. So yeah, the third question was about the meaningful opportunities AI can still offer in low resources or contested environments. What I've found that is the biggest opportunity is not in high-end AI, but in the using AI to strengthen basic administrative and services delivery functions. In many governments in developing countries are overwhelmed with the repetitive administrative tasks and scattered information. In this context, even very modest AI tools like helping classify documents, assisting frontline workflows, or connecting data with the different departments can make a negotiable difference. And this was also reflected in today's presentation as well. Many successful examples are not about the complex models, but about improving how governments make decisions, reach people, or deliver services more effectively. So for me, the opportunity is a fit for the context AI that supports existing workflows and strengthens the foundational functions of governments. And the last question was about what we absolutely need to get right now, given how fast AI is moving. So I would say it is a governance. AI increasingly influencing real administrative decisions, but in many of the countries I've worked with, digital systems move quickly, while laws, oversight mechanisms, and data governance frameworks move much more slowly. If governance falls behind, AI can unintentionally reinforce inequality, weaken transparency, or undermine public trust. International principles from OECD or UNESCO are very helpful, but they must have to be localized, adapted to the institutions, culture, and data realities of each country. And one thing I consistently see is this. Countries often deploy technology first and think about governance later. But as the earlier failure cases showed, these almost always leads to problems. So for AI to actually support development, we need to make sure ecosystems and governance foundations come first before scaling up AI tools. AI presents real opportunities, more inclusive services, more responsive systems, and more effective public administration. But the risks, fragmentation, misalignments, and the weakening of the local knowledge are also very real. So the key question for me is not whether countries adopt AI, but how they adopt it and what ecosystem and with what governance values. So I hope today's conversation helps all of us think about AI that must be grounded in local realities and long-term sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. Based on her, based her discussions on her own rich experience and research, particularly in Asia, and she answered the three questions we shared said before. But I have prepared myself for discussion a couple of questions, which is not shared in advance. So actually, but you can imagine what it is. The most frequently words from two presentations and the two discussions as well, next to AI is data, 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 as far as if I am correct. So for effective AI, my understanding is for effective AI, data is a key. In the context of we are talking about developing world or global south, my question is, are there the quantity of good quality data available guarantee AI effectiveness? So I wonder, otherwise, what needs to be done? Or isn't it a right sequence to equip them with infrastructure that can generate or supply good quality data with the quantity? So I think that is my question. So before AI, why don't we talk about data or equipment which can supply, generate such a data? So may I, Savita?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. I think there is a phrase that we often use in economics and elsewhere, which is necessary but not sufficient conditions. So I think that would apply in this case. I think having good quality data in multiple languages that is gathered ethically, these are all essential criteria. But as you said, there are other factors such as infrastructure, governance, everything else, which is just as important. I think what we often don't hear about, because there's so much concern about the power that the big multinationals hold, we don't hear enough about other data gathering interventions. So some of you might know that in India there is a project, an LLM that's being developed in multiple Indian languages called Bhashini, where data is being gathered at local level. In Kenya, I think Professor Dr. Ryu mentioned the case of Kenya. Ken Corpus is another project that's being developed, which is not just Swahili, but other Kenyan languages as well being captured. So I think this is all critical, but as you said, there are other factors we need to think about, such as skills, who uses this. Gio, you talked about access, infrastructure. And I think one other factor for me is perhaps we put too much focus on the end user when we talk about AI use, but we also need to think about the intermediaries and maybe back-end AI use rather than just the end user who's using the data.
Thank you, Savita. I asked the question because I was thinking of Eurocentric, epistemicide, the word you used are all relevant to authentic data. Then the Gio.
In terms of data, we always think about whether this data is reliable. And of course, there are several tools that you can test it out whether this is reliable data. And there's private sectors that heavily investing and developing this area. So number one is we can, of course, validate with these tools and software whether this data is kind of reliable. And second, in order to have a good quality of data, I think we should definitely have good governance, and so that they have a certain procedures to have original data rather than any manipulated or duplicated data. And lastly, I think the most critical part is we need to understand whether this fit for purpose at the same time, where data is coming from. We often take it for granted. We have a data, but we don't know where it's coming from. And I think this is where the problem are actually coming in. They just aggregate it from nowhere, and they're just finding the way, or who is reliable for this data. So I think the finding the right source at the same time, right purpose is a critical part that having a good data.
Thank you very much. Then, Dr. Sun, as
Thank
you
you.
said, so Huawei is more, isn't it important?
Yeah, so thank you very much for a very insightful question. First of all, I'm not an AI policy expert, but from a perspective of very normal person, I would like to say that nowadays, when I look at many international events on the AI topics, almost every country says that we are now announcing we are going to lead AI something, right? And even on the international platforms like OECD or GPI or World Bank or any international organizations and entity, they are now trying to make their own standardization activities, standardization of AI something, right? So from a perspective of very normal person, there are too many things are going on. It's really hard for us to catch or follow up what's going on. And so I think that at least on the level of international organizations, they can do something. They can work together to collaborate, to make some kind of standardized framework. Yep. And also, the second, on the local level, and I mentioned briefly about the domestic importance of domestic expertise on AI. With that internationally standardized framework, I think local or each government can develop their own developing domestic expertise to build the standardized or data, good quality data with quantity, or quantity data with good quality on their own to be aligned with the international frameworks. Yep.
Thank you. Then, Dr. Yu.
Okay, so in developing countries where their data was scarce, nowadays the data is much more available because thanks to the development of the AI technology. For example, satellite images, satellite imaging, mobile phone data, and unstructured data is also available with the advancement of the AI technologies. But I would say, my discussions, data governance is much more important. The data security, especially data standards, where we can use data, not fragmented data. So it should be the data governance. It should be considered simultaneously with the data availability.
Thank you. Dr. Liu and Dr. Sun, particularly for using the word I most love, which is standard and standardization. I decided not to use the word today, but because thanks to them, I'm going to ask a question, particularly Sevita and Jiho. Last week, there was the first International AI Standard Summit was held in Seoul last week. AI divide and the inclusion of Global South in the venues of AI governance and AI standardization were discussed. And they also suggested capacity building, not only for AI, the technical skills, but also for participation in governance and the standard. So my question to Savita and the Gio, is there any venue or mechanism where the developing countries to participate in the discourses or discussion of governance and particularly AI standardization? Or how do we connect the two communities? I'm just asking. If you, and for your information, this year World Bank publishes the World Development Report titled "The Standard for Development." So from that context, is there any way we can connect the two themes?
Yeah, so that's a big question. I think that there's a lot of discussion around development of standards. Some of you might know that one of the major AI summits, which is following on from Paris, and then I think it started with Chatham House in the UK, then Paris, then so South Korea as well, and next in India in February, called the Global AI Summit. And I think one of the key aims for all these summits is to discuss the question of standards. I was in a pre-meeting of the India summit, and there was a lot of pushback from civil society, from education institutions, others who said that often there just isn't enough participation into those standards, or there is participation but it doesn't actually translate into the standards at the end. So I think, again, this is a question about power and voice, who gets included in the question of standards. And then the other aspect is, if you're talking to the average, let's say, woman owner of an MSME who's using WhatsApp and using generative AI and chat on WhatsApp, then what does a standard mean for her? Does it protect her? Does it enable her to do her job better, etc.? So how do you translate those high-level standards to the actual end user? So I think there are all these questions, again, the difference between, as you were saying, between theory and reality. What's the gap? So there is movement, but I think there's still a lot of questions around where we are.
Thank you. Then, Gio, do you have?
As I earlier mentioned, we recently ran the papers on 4C+R. I'm sure our colleagues, I'm sure Jackie is there, who is based in South Korea. You can also reach out to him for further details. But we have some framework. At the same time, based on my understanding, of course, it can't be World Bank standard, but there is an ongoing discussion with ITU, and already there are lots of standards that can fit into different areas. Of course, it depending on what are the purpose of the AI application is occurring, but there is ongoing discussion, and I'm sure the colleagues at the bank is still having a discussion with client countries, which is LMICs, and to understand what are the critical needs and gaps that's coming from, and based on this understanding, they always go to these big events and conversation with ITU and other international organization to kind of agree on some of the standard they want to shape it. So I can't say the details, of course. I'm not the right person to answer it, but that was my understanding.
Thank you very much. Now, because we have two presentations, we are relatively relaxed the session. So now I open the floor. So do you have any question or yes, please.
Good evening. Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you for the important topic of global AI development, innovation, and inclusion. My name is Juma, and I am a founder of Humblebee AI Group. We develop AI talents to meet the demand for high-quality talent. My question is especially to Dr. Sun. You mentioned about we have to be bold enough to invest into our own AI, right? Rather than, even though it's expensive, if we want to ensure democratic AI, then we need to be able to customize AIs for every specific solutions, meaning rather than targeting for AI users, we have to target for AI builders. My question is, preparing AI talent is expensive, and universities are not very well, the education institutions are not well suited these days because of the dynamic, rapid improvement in the AI field. And I have been in the AI field for 10 years, and when I studied AI in 2014, we were talking about what's AI. We didn't even have a clear definition for AI. For example, Russell and Norvig in his book, in their books, they say, is it like a think like human, or act like human, or think rationally, or act rationally? What is it, right? What I mean is, education itself may not be sufficient, and we may need to focus on the new directions or new paradigm shift in how we prepare AI talent if we want to focus on democratic AI and if we want to focus on inclusive AI. And my question is, who will fund that? Because, for instance, in our company, we are self-funded, and we prepared close to 70 people, talent in our own expense. But now the big companies are targeting. For example, we did the work, and then our talents portfolio, and now the big companies are trying to attract, right? Obviously, they have more money than us. My question is, who should fund it? If this is how it goes, we may not be able to train, but if you expect the university graduates, the universities are not sufficient, right? Because of as I said, that within 10 years, we had so many changes, and what I learned in the past maybe 5 years in academia may not be applicable in this last 3 years. So who should fund it? And then, or maybe another way is, should we force or press governments to make policies so that we can transfer AI talent, people can train their AI talent like soccer players train their talent and then transfer, or for a fee. So how can we ensure democratic AI if we cannot fund high quality AI talents? Thank you. That was my question.
Thank you. So it is direct to you.
Thank you very much for the question. It is a $1 billion question, but hard to answer. So in short, there is no right answer. But I would like to say my perspective from my activity as a Korea delegation to OECD. There are some discussions about the AI talents development. And we usually talk about the expertise gaps between developing and developed country, but very with a caution, we are raising an issue that gap between private sector and public sector. What I mean by public sector is mainly university, higher educations. Because when we look at the AI R&D and expertise level, most R&D are invested by private sector. Also, most expertise, high-level expertise, comes from private sector. So the human resource mobility doesn't flow both ways. Usually, the private, if you get a PhD in AI and you get much higher income in the private sector. So when you are junior PhD, you go to global tech companies rather than becoming a professor at the Department of AI on the campus. So of course, MIT professor might be different, a different situation, but it's very exceptional. So there is a study, look at the data. So before the AI became a very hot topic like this, like 20 years ago, we analyzed the background, academic background of AI expertise in the United States. And the graph was like this. But now, high-level expertise comes from a very relatively small number of prestigious top-tier university, most from MIT or Stanford. So the graph is like this. And meaning that the high-level expertise comes from a very small portion of our society. And this human resource goes to private sector, and they don't mobilize themselves between private and public. So the thing is that the traditional role of higher education to educate many good people and train them ready to work in our society for the public goods, it becomes, it raises some concerns among the policymakers. Of course, private sector, if they are doing great, that's ideal. They survive by themselves without government funding. But they have their own interest. So majority of AI R&D and expertise are designed by their private sectors, their own interests. So this is the starting point where policymakers think about, oh, we should look at more carefully on the role of higher education, especially in terms of AI industries. So this is not my answer. That's the, the current ongoing discussion among OECD members. So I hope this might help your
Thank you, Dr. Sun, answering for a tough question. And anybody from the panelists to add? Or any other? Yeah, there is two hands up. So let me begin with the lady in white.
Thank you. I'm Professor Kim Soo-han from Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Well, and my question, thank you all for the good talks, and my question goes to Professor Baylor. Epistemocide is giving me a hard time. I'm leading a project of creating AI museum curation for the First Nations people, Bushmen in Southern Africa. And this project is about creating a pluralism in storytelling and knowledge based on empathy between us and them. Well, because we believe that AI would be an effective tool to collect local voices, I was there and I went to talk to people, and there was one museum curator, Khoi people, First Nations woman, and she said, okay, this village is based on a German priest, and we were so blessed because German priest was here, so we were able to be civilized, and we became a believer, and we, from hunter-gatherer, we could be a farmer, so we could be prosperous. Totally resonating the Bismarck's 3 Cs in a Berlin conference. So here, for me, as a researcher, this data from local, of course, but it's contaminated. Well, so in that sense, I now have to go back to the research and writings, which record the previous stories of the local people, community of indigenous people, but most of them are written and interpreted by European settlers or their descendants. So I'm now in this dilemma, and what should I do now? Thank you.
I mean, that is such an amazing topic. That's fascinating. I'd love to hear know more about how you're approaching it. I would probably guess you're not alone in terms of, curating these multiplicities of knowledge. I mean, the ideal is just to have as much plurality, as many diverse voices. But I think in your case, you're also saying that history is also being rewritten, or has been rewritten, right? I think it's about capturing as many voices, including the fact that you have already seen where the tension lies, right? So capturing that tension as well. I think the problem is when we are just putting a query into generative AI. So let's say in your study, you're saying, give me some quotes from people that I should include in this museum curation. I think that's when the problem arises, because you get this output that's very it doesn't talk about the plurality of the voices that you've encountered. So I think that's where we have all the conversations about AI as a neo-colonial force, or replicating colonialism, where these ideas are coming in, and then people are also replicating the language that's being produced, because as you saw on the slide, people think that this is the right way to speak, or that now we'll be entering the language of discourse that is important. So I love the project that you're doing. My only response to it is just to capture as many voices as possible, even if you know that there is bias embedded in some of the responses. But I think it's fascinating. I would love to hear more. Yeah.
Thank you. Next to, yep. Microphone, please.
Good morning. Thank you for your insightful talk this morning. My name is Tan Kim. I'm a PhD candidate at Seoul National University. I'm currently exploring how multilateral development organizations are adopting AI to manage their knowledge. So this morning's talk has been very interesting to me as well. So I'd like to address my question to Dr. Baylor once again. So I found your example of how many development organizations are now seeing the use of Gen AI as inevitable and moving towards integrating into their workflows. And you noted that the junior staff were actively using Gen AI, and I think this raises interesting questions how we define expertise in a way. So senior staff used to hold advantage because their accumulated knowledge, but if Gen AI comes into the ground, I think that shifts the dynamics a bit in the organization as well. So in your view, do you see the use of Gen AI change the hierarchical or power dynamics within these organizations? And if so, how do you see the roles or authorities or decision-making processes changing inside of these organizations? Thank you.
Yeah. Again, I'd love to hear about your research, because, to see what you're finding. And maybe, Jiho, you might, I don't know how much you're allowed to share from the World Bank experience as well, but I feel that there is a big disconnect, because this is exactly, all organizations are now struggling to understand what should be their organization policy, and universities. So I can tell you now, I don't know if this is being recorded, but I can tell you now that Columbia, as an Ivy League university, does not have an AI policy. It is left up to us as instructors to say what we want from students. All we can do is change the method of assessment so that we know that they're not using generative AI, right? Which means more classroom discussion, etc. Does it change power dynamics, is your question. I think what is happening now is that there is this dual culture almost, where there are some staff junior staff and students who are clearly using generative AI to produce their outputs. Their efficiency skyrockets, but their quality doesn't necessarily, right? Because we're all producing the same content. At the same time, what's happening is I feel a lot of senior staff including tenure-track professors at Columbia, don't know that AI is being used. So they think, oh, this is great. This person's done the work in half the time. Then they dig a little deeper and they realize, oh, what are they really saying? Sounds good, but what's underneath? So I think that's why I'm fascinated at this disjuncture, where we are, because there's such conflict between, okay, is this efficiency, or is it eradication of skills? Is it eradication of institutional knowledge? And where are we, and what are our policies? I don't know if anybody else on the panel wants to respond, but I feel that there is a big tension right now. And one of the reasons why the independent evaluation group brought us in at the bank was they were worried that their staff were using AI, but they were worried about reputational risk, like the Deloitte example. If something happened and they were not supposed to use AI, but of course you can use it on your personal computers, right? All this is probably highly confidential, but I think many of us are facing the same situation, so yeah.
Gio, you want to add?
I don't know how much I can share in details, of course, because I also need to get some clearance from the communication teams and so on. But one thing I can share is we do have kind of internal LLM system, like a GPT sort of things. So it doesn't mean we developed, we kind of borrowing the license from the private sectors to use and state all the data within the bank and use it for sake of the right use. And we do have some policies. For example, we shouldn't create any images like humans or anything like that, or we shouldn't put any sensitive data. I mean, we can use it, but in our sort of these internal LLMs, we can't really upload it or share any informations. And there's certain kind of rules where we always need to verify and validate it with different teams before going to any public. Then we also put a disclaimer that this work has been done by generative AI or some of the AI. So we do have some kind of policies, and I think this is still going on in terms of how we can ensure the quality of work is produced at the bank.
Very diplomatic answer.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. So we have just one short slot for last two questions. So please be brief. And you too as well.
My name is Sonuk Baek from Sangmyeong University. I'm professor. My question is that actually KOICA and EDCF is using a lot of funds for developing countries. For example, in KOICA, this year 1.5 trillion Korean won was used for this year. But I was wondering if there is no AI-related project in KOICA or EDCF. So I think one reason of that phenomenon is that there's no good success story or best practice for AI-related project. And I'm very worried about that. Next year, 2026, there's not much AI-related, feasibility study or something like that. So my question is, I just want to hear from the panelists here, that what is what would be a good best practice, or what should be the first priority regarding AI project? For example, infrastructure support or data gathering project, or application of a real AI algorithm to real problem solving. So I just want to hear the voice of yours.
Thank you very much. It sounds we go back to my first question. So just briefly, one word, Ichi, if you can. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your question. Like I said before in my discussion, I think what is the most important is the AI ecosystems. So the legal system and especially capacity building is also very important, and the budget for the sustainability is also very important. I think it's not that much case best practice that we can present so far, but I think we should do, because this is the beginning, especially in Korea, the AI related project is just beginning to arise. So we should, I think this conversation is a very good starting point to discuss how we develop, especially in Korea ODA program, to more AI related ODA program to be successful. Thank you.
This is a very difficult question to answer in short. So we all know that the geopolitical tensions changes the way of international collaboration, especially when it comes to technology collaborations. Every country has its own strategic technology list, their own list. So, but the thing is that science and technology is very international. No single country can dominate or monopolize the entire life cycle of research and innovations. So we have to collaborate. That's the basic things. But we also have to compete each other. And especially in the sector of AI, this is the sector where every single country competes each other with a very ambitious plan. So nowadays, multilateral meetings or multilateral organizations are talk about setting a new rule for international science and technology collaborations. The core thing of that effort is to, I think, to understand our partners' policy or partners' ecosystem or partners' research culture. So when we try to collaborate on AI technology for development, we have to understand basically our partners' research environment and research ecosystem. So I would say the most and the basic things we have to consider for AI-related ODA or development effort is to sharing our own research culture related to AI and ecosystem characteristic. Thank you.
Thank you. Then Gio, very quickly.
Very briefly, of course. I would recommend you to read our report recently. I'm not selling it, but it talks about 4C plus R, which I already mentioned earlier. I think it kind of addresses what your concern is. So please have a look. And yeah, over to you.
I think this is a good thing, actually. I don't think it's a problem because AI is a means to an end. It's not a silver bullet. And when I see AI in proposals, my first question is always, what is it going to do? So I think we still need to keep focusing on the development problems or issues as our end goal, not the technology.
Thank you very much. If I am allowed to take advantage of being a facilitator, I'd like to share two things I have thought throughout the session. So actually, I have been teaching ICT and development for almost 2 decades at Yonsei University. So the word I have used all the classes or any the research papers, inclusion, digital divide, blah, blah, blah. The challenge, the homework thought I have now, what we can do and what we should do, not to make those all words, inclusion, digital divide, another set of rhyme or cliche. So I think that is the challenge homework we have. And the next one, second one is very personal. As I said, I have been teaching ICT and development. Now I am thinking, do I have to change AI, the subject into AI and development? I want to keep the foundation. I want to keep the principle, not to be much influenced by the trend, but still very challenging. To get more students, I think change title. Okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much for having us and sharing your time together here today. And I'd like to ask you to give some big applause to the panelists. Thank you very much.